Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of PSYCOW. This week we have a very special guest. It was only a matter of time before we got him on the show, being that we talked to Alexa Marsigliano, Lauren Ashley Carter, Pollyanna McIntosh, Charlotte Mulheusen, of course Andrew Van Houten. We've talked to so many people from the film The Woman, because as you guys know, Stacy and I are very big Woman fans. So we had to get Sean Bridges on the show, and this week he was gracious enough to give us an hour of his time to sit down and chat with us. From films like Children of the Corn 2, The Woman, Jug Face, he was in the TV series Deadwood. He's in so many things, and we cover a lot of that in the interview tonight. He tells us how he got into acting, his future projects, what he's been working on. So, without further ado, let's just jump right into the interview with Sean Bridgers. Were you a horror fan growing up?
No, not really. Yeah, I wouldn't. Let me see. How do I answer that? Yeah, I suppose I was. When I was a kid, I grew up in a small town in North Carolina, and some of my first movie experiences were at the public library in my hometown. They would show old films. So a lot of them were silent films. Like saw a lot of Charlie Chaplin and some Buster Keaton and Harold Lloyd, and I loved those. And they would also show like the old old Dracula with Bela Lugosi and the Lon Chaney Wolfman and the original Frankenstein and things like that. I saw those when I was really young, and I loved them. And I liked Japanese Godzilla movies or anything that came on TV late at night, but I wasn't really I was never all that into the Friday the 13th particularly or any of that. I mean, I liked them, but they scared me. They did their job for sure. But I didn't seek them out, I wouldn't say. But I love scary movies. I guess it comes down to how you define a horror movie. I mean, I know that it's defined sort of as a certain genre. Like one of my favorite movies of all time ever is The Shining. I mean, that's the movie that scared me the most, and I saw it when I was about 16, and it scared the crap out of me in a different way than Friday the 13th or Halloween. Halloween did scare me. Halloween was when I was a kid. Halloween was the greatest horror movie I'd seen. That and maybe Jaws.
Right.
You consider Jaws a horror movie? I do, because it scared the crap. It horrified me. So.
Oh, it's definitely a horror movie. It's about a killer shark, definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess the answer is I did like horror movies. I'd never really thought about it, but apparently I did and do.
Did you have any influences for starting to act?
Yeah, I did actually. Let's see. I mean, I always had a bit of a theatrical flair, probably anyway. When I was a kid, I was kind of a weird kid, I guess. And when I was in second and third grade, I did like some plays that I would I didn't really write them, but I guess I would put them together, right? I would produce, direct, and then inevitably star in these plays. And the first one I did was in second or third grade. My parents had taken my sisters and I, to Washington, D.C., and my godmother lives there, and they had taken us to see a play at the Ford Theater, and where Lincoln was assassinated. And there's a museum in the basement there. And I was in second grade, I guess. So how old is that? That's 8, I guess. And I was just fascinated by it. So I did a play about the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. And now it's like all over the place now, but I had everybody scooped back in whatever that was, 76 or whatever. And so I always kind of, I played really hard in that way, and would put on sort of stuff like that. But and my parents would take us to plays and things like that whenever there was one. And but I didn't really think you could be an actor until I was one, really, probably. I mean, it didn't seem like something that you could do. I didn't know any actors, and But I guess the first time it ever occurred to me that maybe I could be an actor was, I guess I was about 15 and I saw a movie with Robert Duvall called Tender Mercies, which is not at all a horror movie, but
Right. It's a great movie, though. Great movie.
And I went to see it, and I didn't know who Robert Duvall was. I hadn't seen The Godfather, and I hadn't seen Apocalypse Now. Um, and it was so realistic that I kept sort of thinking, like, I've never seen a movie like that. I mean, I just had never seen anything like it. I felt like I knew all those characters because they were, it's Texas, but it was Southern. And, that was the first time I thought maybe I could do that, what he's doing. I mean, then you come to realize that you have to be pretty good to make it look that easy.
Right.
But that, and I saw Tommy Lee Jones in something on PBS when I was probably about that age. And, neither of those guys are particularly good looking, and they sort of sounded like me and everybody I knew, and I hadn't experienced that much as a kid. The only things that I ever saw that were Southern was the Dukes of Hazzard and stuff like that. And so yeah, I saw Tommy Lee Jones do a PBS version of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof with Jessica Lange and Rip Torn. It was awesome. And that was the first time it ever occurred to me. So when I was in high school, I actually did a few plays, and but I still didn't think you could be an actor really until my first real acting job. And I thought, oh, okay, this isn't okay. I can do this, because there were I was working with some young actors who were famous and all that, and they were, I don't want to mention names, but they were terrible. I mean, they were just awful. Like, rehearsing with them, I thought, my God, I can do this.
Right.
But I've got lots of influences, but I would say those two guys, Tommy Lee Jones and Robert Duvall, those were the two people that it first occurred to me that, oh, that's what acting is. Because up until that point, Roger Moore was an actor. You know what I mean? It was sort of, Burt Reynolds was an actor. If that makes sense. Because I didn't see great movies in my hometown. I didn't see a lot of stuff. And this is before VHS was really big. So, we had cable, but you just didn't see a lot of stuff. You saw kind of commercial sort of network kind of stuff. And I didn't relate to any of it, really. Not to say I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't relate.
Right.
So that was a long-winded answer to a very short question.
No, that's fine. We like
That's
long
great.
answers.
Yes. Well, you have been acting for quite a long time, and I know that Children of the Corn 2 was one of the first roles you had. How did you get involved with Children of the Corn?
Oh, how did I get? Let's see. I don't know. I gotta go back in my memory bank. I was in college, and I was in college at Western Carolina University, and I was doing a lot of plays and theater, and was really enjoying it. I think I probably really kind of knew that I wanted to be an actor at that point, but like I said, didn't really know how you did that. And I did a play at Western that got a lot of great reviews, and I got a lot of attention for it. And we got a great review from a guy named Tony Kiss, who's I guess a critic and writer for the Asheville Citizen Times in Asheville, North Carolina. And so I got this great review, and a friend of mine said, well, you should go get an agent. And I was like, I kind of know what that means. What is it?
Right.
And she introduced me to her agent, and this woman was really a secretary who handled models or a few actors, I think. And but at the time in North Carolina, they were making films in the South. Well, not just North Carolina, but all over the South. They'd started making films, and I hadn't heard from her, and she called me out of the blue, and I got an audition for a movie, and it went well, and I ended up getting the part, but the movie went away, and but the casting directors kept bringing me in, and I did a movie called Murder in New Hampshire, which was a movie of the week with Helen Hunt, and after that, I was on a roll, and I got an audition for Children of the Corn 2, which shot in, I think, Liberty, North Carolina, like in the middle of, lots of corn.
Mhm.
And yeah, that was, I worked a lot that summer. I was still in college, and I worked on that, and I worked as an sort of like a glorified extra on Last of the Mohicans, which shot in the area. And that was actually my first experience on a movie set, and I thought, well, this is pretty miserable. Because, and most of the people were just dicks, and I thought at the time, well, I guess I won't work in movies because this is what it's like. But then I did that TV movie, and then I did Children of the Corn and had a good time.
Well, that's good.
But that's how I got it. I don't know. It was just an audition, and I had, I don't know, 10 or 12 lines. I think I was named Jedediah or something, and I was the sort of reluctant corn kid killer, if I remember right. Like, there's something about, like, yeah, but I'm like the voice of reason.
Right, I remember the line. You're like, they were our parents.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it was the subtext was like, really? Why? Really? Do we have to? I mean,
Right.
which
Well-
is
Well, Deadwood was a big series that I remember watching a lot. How did you get involved with that, and how many times did you say the words cocksucker?
oh, I don't know. I didn't probably say it that much.
I know everyone else did.
I don't. I'm sure I said it a few times. I don't know how many times I heard it, but I got that like most jobs. I mean, at the time, my wife was. We had 2 kids at the time. We have 3 now, and we were living in North Carolina, and my wife Rachel was teaching at Western Carolina, and I would just fly back and forth to LA and stay with friends and, audition and try to get a job. And, if I did, I did. And if I didn't, we just kind of made do. And that was one of those times I was out there and I caught a big fish, I guess. I mean, that was sort of what my life was like. It was sort of it still is to a certain extent. It's kind of like a friend of mine once said that I'm like an Inuit. That I kind of go off and I have to kill a whale. And if I do, everybody eats. And if I don't, we starve. That's a little dramatic. It's not necessary. But it does feel that way sometimes. I would go out to LA for 2 or 3 weeks at a time and just try to get whatever meetings or auditions I could get. And so I got it, kind of went in and met with David Milch and Walter Hill and had the audition and was leaving. And then the casting director came running out because I was leaving that night to go back to North Carolina. And she ran out and said, "Can you come back tomorrow?" And I said, "Yep, sure can." And got the job. The role of Johnny Burns was not really I remember when the script first came out and my agents sent it to me, they wanted me to read for other parts, and I just kept thinking, well, I'm not going to get those parts. I mean, I don't know, I'm not famous, and I'm not, represented by a powerful agency or anything. I mean, I love my agents; they're great, but the powerful agencies have first dibs on most roles on high-profile projects like that. So, but they couldn't find exactly what they wanted with Johnny Burns, and that was because they probably didn't really know what they wanted. And so I know a lot of guys like Johnny, so I went in as Johnny, and I knew the show from reading the pilot would probably need some comic relief a bit, and I can play the fool pretty well, and every story needs a fool. It's sort of a classic literary tradition, and so I went in and did my thing, my take on it, and they liked it, and the part grew, and that was my goal. My goal initially was just to survive the first season.
Right.
And then they locked me up with the series regular deal, and it was then that I moved my wife and kids to California, because I'm always a little bit reluctant to move to California. I go back and forth all the time, but I love it, but I don't necessarily want to live there. So anyway, that was 3 wonderful years, and I'm proud to say I was in every episode, and I have Ian McShane primarily to thank for that, because he was so awesome and I was tied in with him that, I got a lot of episodes where, I got paid very well for standing behind the bar.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, but anyway, yeah, that was a great job. That was a one. I never woke up in the morning and did not want to go to work. So that's pretty rare, no matter what you're doing.
Right.
So.
That's true. And you've been part of quite a bit of television series, including Deadwood, True Blood, and even American Gothic. Do you
Right.
like working with series or more with film?
It doesn't really matter. I like telling good stories, so it really matters to me. Like, it's like, is it a good story? Is it worth telling? And then it's like, is it a good part? Well, I would say, is it a good story? And then, who are the people I'm working with? And then, is it a good part? I'd say it goes in that order for me. Well, actually, probably on top of that list is like, can they write a check? Because I'm pretty pragmatic about it. I have 3 kids and 2 houses, and I have life. So, that's kind of first. So I haven't had the luxury of being terribly picky, and maybe in some ways, I should be. I have a lot of friends who are actors who are very almost neurotic about what they do and don't do. And I'm kind of free of that because I have more important things. I mean, the most important thing for me is to provide. And I always kind of feel like even if something's not very good, I can make it good.
Right.
So maybe I'm just kind of arrogant in that way. It's not always worked out, but I always kind of think so. I actually did something once, and I won't say what it is, that my agent actually asked me. Jackson was really little, and he was really like young, and we were pregnant with our daughter Catherine. We were living in California, and I got offered this thing, which I won't mention. And my agent called me and said, "Please don't do it." I said, "Why?" I said, "I can make it good." And she just said, "Oh." And she said, "Look, I will pay you whatever they're paying you not to do it. You really need this job." And I had actually just, I'd been driving around our neighborhood in Burbank, California, and my wife and I had found this piece of lawn furniture, like nice pine kind of lawn furniture that just needed a little work. And I was refurnishing it, and I thought, I can sell this for like $15. So I told my agent, I said, "Well, look, you know what I'm doing right now? I'm covered in like grit because I'm sanding this. So yeah, I need the job." And she called and found out how much they were going to pay me and decided I should go ahead and do the job rather than her pay for it. But you know what? I was pretty good in it. I mean, and I learned something. So that's kind of the way I've always looked at it is, I am actually pickier now, just for the amount of time that it takes, away from my family and just life in general. But, I've always just felt like I could learn something from every experience. And, so, and I've had a lot of good luck with it, like the Woman kind of came to me that way. And, if I might not have done it had I been rolling in dough.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, you just kind of see where things take you.
Well, I mean, speaking of The Woman, we told you before that we're huge fans. Best horror movie in the past 10 years, at least for us.
Wow, that's
we're obsessed with the film. I mean, we have.
Yeah, you said you've got tattoos, so that's
right. Yeah, we have Lauren Ashley Carter and Alexa, and even Charlotte. They've all signed pictures for us, and Pollyanna. I mean, it's been awesome. But the character Chris Cleek is just dark and depraved, and it's chilling how powerful the performance was. Is there anything in particular that helped you prepare for that role?
Is there anything that prepared me for it? Yeah, a few things. I didn't really. I can't say I don't really like. I didn't have to really prepare, and I don't necessarily like. I mean, I always kind of think about it, and it's sort of percolating, like, especially with a job like that, where I knew I had the job a few months before we actually shot, right? So there was no rush. So I would read it over and over. I don't really like prepare, like memorize my lines or anything. It's more like I just read the script over and over.
Right.
And I would say we were actually moving from California to Toronto that summer, so I really didn't think about it up until, I really started focusing on it probably about a week or 2 weeks before that, but before we started shooting. But I did read certain things, like I read a book by M. Scott Peck, he wrote this book called A Road Less Traveled, which he's famous for, but he also wrote a book called People of the Lie. And M. Scott Peck was a psychologist, or I suppose he still is. And People of the Lie is about human evil, and I think now people would categorize it as a sociopath or something like that. And so I read that just to kind of get some hints into the psychology of it. But the truth of the matter is the script was good, the story was good, it made sense. And when I first read it and first discussed it with Lucky, I had a pretty good handle on how I wanted to play it. And I kind of explained to him how I wanted to play it and what I wanted to do. And that's what, he wanted to. And we both knew that was what would work. And the truth of the matter is all I said was like, well, I'm just going to play it. Chris Cleek thought he was right. It's not that complicated. It's like you just play every scene and every moment in every scene as though you're right. I never thought about Chris Cleek as being a bad person. Of course, I knew he was,
Right.
but you can't play that. I've said this before in interviews about that role, and just in terms of acting and how you approach things, is that if you're playing Adolf Hitler thought he was right. You see? So as an actor, your job is to achieve what your character's trying to achieve in any given scene. So I just focused on that, and I was surrounded by great people, and that's really all I do. And then I just play. So my job is to give Lucky lots of usable options so that he can kind of design what he wants. There's a lot of stuff that not a lot of scenes and stuff, but there were a lot of different takes and ways certain scenes could have gone because I gave him several options, and I love how what they did with it, So you sort of design with something like that. It's his movie, especially when he wrote it. So there were a few things that I was very specific about. Like I had a very, very clear idea of how I wanted to slap Angie. I've forgotten what her character's name is. What was her name? Gosh, isn't that terrible? Belle, thank you. When I slapped Belle, I was thinking about that scene, and I was brushing my teeth, and I noticed that I brushed my teeth with my right hand because I'm right-handed, and I just was noticing, I brushed my teeth. So then I started brushing my teeth with my left hand, and I noticed that it felt weird, and then it occurred to me like, oh, this is how I slap her, is I just sort of switch hands. And so we worked on that, and then they framed it up beautifully in the mirror and all. And I love that scene. I think it's fan. And we did that in like 2 takes. The first one didn't quite work, and then the second one was perfect. And Lucky is so good that he was just like, I think we got it. Let me look at it. And because you don't want to slap Angie Bettis all day, So
Right.
I was glad we got it. But I don't know. That's sort of how I approached it. It's not that hard when it's a good script and everything makes sense. And playing a bad guy, the key to playing a bad guy is don't let the bad guy think he's a bad guy. That's always more interesting. And I'm of the school where you trust the story. It's like the line in Hamlet, the play's the thing, wherein you catch the conscience of the king. That idea, the audience, that's what the audience really wants. And it's not really about me. It's about the whole story. So you're just trying to serve the story.
Well, Chad Crawford Kinkle told us that he wishes that he could work with many more Sean Bridgers. How was it working on Jug Face?
Well, that's nice. I'd be totally into that if he wanted to write something and I play like 8 characters. I'd be totally. I'm a big
Do like a
fan.
Nutty Professor?
Yeah, I was thinking more like the southern version of John Gielgud, but yeah,
Right.
yeah. Chad was really fantastic. You know, Chad is very, very like almost unnaturally calm, which is really great in a director. You know, especially a first-time feature director shooting that movie in 17 days or whatever it was. I mean, it was not long, and he was just really calm. I mean, Andrew did put together an incredible crew and you know, group and cast with him to work with, but that all the credit goes to Chad, absolutely, first and foremost for writing the script, but also he had a very steady hand and very approachable, very sensible, knows what he wants, but is very open to just seeing whatever you do, because I like to just see what happens. I don't like to sort of, you know, I like to be prepared and all that, but I don't like to, things can get monotonous. You know, you're doing the same take over and over. And the key is for there to be some spark of something real and to capture that. And that's kind of the key to film acting. Um, and, you know, he picked up on that immediately. So he was, very patient with the fact that sometimes after ordinarily people would yell cut, I'll continue sometimes. Sometimes I'll start a little bit, like improvise a little bit before the scene. You don't necessarily use that, but you just sort of, so that when you're doing the scene, it just is sort of, it flows in a way. So, I would love to work with Chad again. It was really, really, I feel kind of honored that I was in his first movie. I think that's great.
Well, the roles in Jug Face and the Woman are so they just contrast, but they're both incredibly powerful in their own right. How did you prepare for Jug Face?
Well,
I mean, I
again,
know you said you didn't prepare for roles, but is there anything that you
well,
did?
I do. I don't want to sound like I don't.
Right, right. I didn't mean to say it like that.
Have any kind of like I do prepare, but I just don't make uh a thing out of it. So it's hard for me to sort of like I don't have a regimen or anything. That's all I mean. Is like
Right,
it's
exactly.
sort of like it percolates with me, right? And then you get kind of you have you know you'll be talking to a friend about something else and you'll see something and you'll realize that in the back of your brain you're still thinking about this character in the story and something will occur to you while you're mid conversation with someone. So I'm always working on it, but I just don't you know, sit down and go, now I'm going to figure out, you know, I can't do
Right.
it that way. I don't live that way. But, a few things, once I got to Tennessee, I didn't really know what I was going to do. When I first read the script, I think Andrew initially was thinking that I would play Sustin, the father, and that Larry Fessenden might play, Dwight. And when I read the script and Andrew and I were discussing, you know, the possibility of me doing it, I I thought, you know, I should play Dwight because I have known several Dwights, and I'd also played Lauren's father, you know, before that.
Right.
Although, you know, definitely a different father-daughter relationship. But so anyway, so I went with Dwight and Larry went with Sustin, and I think that was great because he's fantastic. And have you guys talked to him? Because that guy is friggin' awesome.
We really want to. It's hard to get in contact with a lot of these
Oh my
people.
God. Yeah, he's super busy, but God, I love that guy. I mean, he's sort of like a hero. That guy is just amazing. Amazing person. Um, anyway, preparing for Dwight. I had this idea. There was a guy in my hometown who I sort of was basing Dwight on. And, one thing about this particular person is he has, big goggle like glasses, and I was trying to kind of get into it and realized I needed those glasses. So I just went to the local Walmart and bought what I thought were kind of goofy glasses, right? And I got 3 pairs of them. Are you there?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay. Oh, sorry, my screen just went dead.
Oh, no problem.
I went and bought three different sizes, so that depending on what kind of lens it was, and depending on what I had to do, one I could kind of see, the middle one not so much, and then the super the super thick ones I couldn't see anything. I mean, it was. But I knew that was for certain angles and certain lenses that it would my eyes would really pop, and it would seem just kind of bizarre. And I thought that would work. And that was kind of it. That, and the costume was fantastic. And I got a friend of mine to let me borrow his boots that the sole kept coming off, and I thought that was perfect. And I just didn't shave. So then I knew I looked like Dwight, and then it was just a matter of getting into him, and I thought he was a really sympathetic and sweet character. There were some things in the original script that we actually shot that they cut out of the movie, which was very wise. Just like I think every decision made with the editing and the sound and everything with that movie was just really smart. Because it would have made Dwight a little too creepy. And I thought one of the things that I was really pleased with was that, it's sort of an unrequited love story. And, I don't know, you'd have to ask Chad if that was, his initial idea in terms of that relationship, but I certainly felt like you needed it. I know he felt you needed it, but I kind of really went for that. So then you just sort of figure out these things. Like if you notice when you watch the movie, like I'm so in love with Ada, but I barely ever touch her.
Yeah.
Like if you notice, there's a few times that I touch her and I just kind of tap her. And I think part of it was one of the things I figured, because you figure these things out as you're going, is that whole little group, culture, cult, whatever you want to call it, that lives in the woods that Dwight was a part of. Dwight actually, I think, had a lot of sense and sort of probably at a very young age instinctively kept himself removed from things like physical contact and didn't allow himself to get too close. Because on some level, subconsciously, he knew it was crazy. And everybody called him crazy, but in fact, he's the most sane person there.
Right.
But I can't say that I really understood that going into it. That sort of, for me anyway, just sort of evolved. And if that was what Chad had in mind, then he did a great job of allowing me to discover that. But yeah, it was just fun, really. It was a great group of people to work with, and I love Tennessee, and it was fun to be back here, and fantastic crew. And Chris Heinrich, who was the first assistant camera on The Woman. Chris was the director of photography on Jug Face, and he was absolutely brilliant, like I knew he would be, because that dude is another guy who's just brilliant dude. Great guitar player, hilarious, wonderful person to work with. So, it was, and I was just pleased to see that it turned out as well as it did, because you never know. I knew that it would be good, and as soon as I got there, I knew it would be better than I thought. After like the first or second day, I was like, this is going to be a lot better than I thought, because I'm always prepared for things not to work.
Right.
Just honestly, I am. So, but it felt like The Woman in that way, where it was like after the first day or so, I was like, oh, this is going to be good. this is going to work.
Well,
So.
You've had your hand in writing and directing films as well. Do you prefer to be behind the camera or in front of the camera?
I don't really care. I mean, what I'm interested in is telling stories that I think are worth telling and that are interesting. And I started writing years ago because I was doing a lot of little movies in North Carolina and being redneck number one and, some movie of the week and things like that. And I worked on a movie that, if you can find it, is actually a real gem. I think it's now called Roadkill USA. There's a lot of movies called Roadkill, but this one's called Roadkill USA, and I don't know if you can find it. But that movie is directed by a fantastic filmmaker out of Charlotte named Tony Elwood. And Tony made a Super 8 movie in maybe the late 80s. He shot it on Super 8, and it's called Killer. And first of all, if you make a movie on Super 8 and it's watchable, that is amazing.
You are a director.
And it's pretty dang good. And Tony had done, I know he'd worked props on Evil Dead 2, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. So there's another horror movie. There you go.
Yes.
I love that movie. He did props on that because they shot that in North Carolina. And I think that, so I did a movie with after he did Killer, which got a lot of buzz at the time in the sort of indie. It was recommended with, what's his name? Billy Joe's Drive-In Theater. What was that thing called? How young are you people? Because I'm almost 45.
Right, I'm not sure. I'm 24.
Okay.
I'm not sure what it is.
There used to be a show called Billy Bob. It's not Billy Bob, but it's a guy did a drive-in movie. He would show kind of like cheesy horror movies that were brilliant because
I think
Science
it's Billy
Theater?
Bob.
not like Science Theater where they make fun of it, because this guy fully loves and appreciates the genius of the Roger Corman kind of school of filmmaking. But anyway, The Killer got a lot of play from him, and Tony was able to make a movie after that was called Roadkill. But then when they got it distributed, it had to be changed to Roadkill USA. And I got to work on it. I worked on it basically for free. And but I was in just about every scene, and I was probably 24 or something. I'd just gotten out of college, 23 or 24. And I'm probably not very good in it. I mean, I was sort of figuring out what I was doing, but the experience of watching a film get made and the fact that you could do it, and watching Tony work really got me going like, oh, you can make a movie. Like I said, the first movie that I worked on as an actor, I worked with these actors, and I went, oh, you can do this. Okay. And it was the same thing with writing and stuff. So I wrote a script called Paradise Falls, which has yet to be distributed, but it is a terrific movie. And I wrote it and produced it and starred in it. And Nick Searcy directed it. Nick is a really prolific actor. He's in Justified right now, but he's been in everything. And he's from my hometown. So I wrote that, and we got it produced, and we won a bunch of film festivals. And everybody in Hollywood said the same thing, which is, wow, what a great movie, but we don't know how to sell it, because it's about two boys or young men during the Depression in the Appalachian Mountains who rob a train and get in all kinds of trouble. And so from there, not being able to get that distributed was pretty heartbreaking. And I continued to work as an actor and continued to write, because I figured, well, the best way to get that movie distributed is to make another one and take what I've learned. So I've been developing I first started writing it probably like 10, 11 years ago. A film called Arkansas Traveler, which is, we're kind of getting really pretty close to getting it made. And, I'm working with, my producing and directing partner, a guy named Michael Hemscott. His nickname's Fish. So Fish and I have been working on developing this for Arkansas Traveler for a long time. And we've got a great cast so far lined up, and we've got, a very powerful agency that's representing it. So we're kind of going down that road. It'll still be a, independent, low budget movie, but, it's kind of a Faustian Western, and, it's going to be great. So that's really what I would like to do. I'd like to have the option of doing that. I'll still work as an actor because I love it, but, I like to do other things. And also, when you're an actor, you're not working a lot of time. So it's either go crazy or try to create something.
Right.
So.
And let me say, I think it's Joe Bob, right? Joe Bob's Drive-In Theater?
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, currently you work with Traveling Productions, if I'm correct.
Yeah,
And you're
that's our company, right? That's Michael Hemscott and I have a company, Traveling Production.
awesome. And you did a documentary for John Ross. Can you tell us more about the Traveling Productions and what's coming up?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, we're working on a documentary about a pretty fascinating man that we met here in Tennessee, named John Ross, and John is 94, and he was a pilot during World War II, and he flew a P-38 Lightning, which was a very, very fast plane. A lot of people did not want to fly it because it was so fast. A lot of people killed themselves flying it. But John was a reconnaissance pilot in the European campaign of World War II. So he was a spy pilot. So he flew missions over occupied Germany alone, often, with no machine guns. He just had cameras. So John's kind of a Jedi.
Yeah.
They exist. And we met him. We were interested in making an animated short about him. We'd heard about him from a friend of mine named Chip Ramsey, who actually plays the store owner in Jug Face.
Right.
My friend Chip has a newspaper here in Manchester, Tennessee, and he told me about John, who was living here. And so Fish and I came to interview him because we thought, oh, that'd be cool. Let's try to make an animated short about some of his missions and things like that. I should mention Fish, Michael Hemscott, he's a pretty brilliant CGI artist. So he worked on The Matrix and a lot of big movies when he was living in LA. He now lives in Denver. But that was our initial plan, was just to do a little short thing. But John is so fascinating that we ended up talking to him for about a week, and actually last summer went down to Florida, where he's living now, and spoke with him some more. So we've got all this footage, and we're cutting it together and trying to raise money so it'll be sort of an animated documentary about a guy. And it's not just his World War II stuff. He grew up during the Depression and hopped trains and worked in the oil fields when oil was just kind of coming on, and has just lived an amazing life and has an amazing attitude about life, and it's pretty inspiring. So we're still working on that. It's just a matter of getting the funding. So but we're getting there. And besides that, right now we're pretty heavily working on getting Arkansas Traveler made, because we've got some traction right now with that. So
It sounds good. We can't wait to see further stuff. With you in front of the camera, behind the camera, we like.
Well, if you go to the Traveling Productions website, and it's Traveling without a G because it's the Southern Traveling.
Right.
We don't always say our G's. So at travelingproductions.com, we made a short film called A Night at the Zoo about 5 years ago that you can see. You can download it, and it's pretty wild. It's got some great actors in it. Me. Just realized as soon as that came out of my mouth. It stars me, so there you go. It's got an actor named Christopher Barry who recently played several roles in Django Unchained, and it's got W. Earl Brown, who's incredibly prolific. Earl worked with me on Deadwood. He played Dan Doherty, and he's been in everything from There's Something About Mary to playing a psycho killer in the new Bates Motel that's coming out, I think, on A&E. So it's just the three of us, and Angie Bettis comes in as she's on the phone. So it was me and Earl Brown and Chris Berry and Angie Bettis, and that's a pretty good cast. And I'll just say it's a very bizarre, wild little flick. It's so check that out. Anybody who's listening to it, I would love it if they would watch it.
We'll do. We'll definitely put that in the description box as well. I just went online just now and checked it out. I'll definitely watch it when we get off the air.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Well, the last thing we like to do on the show is we call it the PSYCOW 8, and it's just kind of like a speed round. And I know you've already answered the first question, which is what's the scariest movie of all time? And I think you answered that with The Shining, correct?
Yeah. That's the one that freaked me out. And
Right.
this is what I would say about horror movies to me, and the reason I think The Woman is such a great one, and Jug Face too for that matter, is that I'm not a big fan of movies that Jackson, can you answer this? It's probably Mom and tell her I'm doing it. Sorry guys.
No problem.
I think I'm not a big fan of movies that just scare you. Like, I mean, it's not that difficult to maneuver a camera to get a reaction, and I love that as much as the next person. But to me, a really great horror movie doesn't just scare you, but it kind of haunts you, and it just sticks with you, and it just kind of creeps you out for days, and that's what The Shining did for me. And I think that's the effect that The Woman has had with most people, is you kind of can't shake it off.
Right.
And
Yeah.
to me, that's really what's scary, is when you're haunted by something. Because if it's just a visceral kind of reaction, that goes away unless you're 12. At least it does for me. But certain movies just get under my skin. So that's kind of my take on horror movies. That's what I'm looking for.
Right.
What's the best movie you've seen in the last 5 years?
Oh God.
That's what everybody says when they ask this question.
I don't know. I'm not good with best. I'll just have to say that my son my son Jackson is 14, so he's just getting to the age where I can show him movies, that I think are pretty awesome. And we watched a couple of weeks ago. We watched There Will Be Blood.
Yes.
Oh, that's a great movie.
And was very, very pleased at how much he loved it. It just kind of blew his mind at how engaged he was and how much it affected him. And that was recent. And a few weeks before that, I showed him Sling Blade, and he had a similar reaction. I didn't watch all of Sling Blade with him, so I was kind of multitasking and kind of came in for the last third of it. And at first, I sat down with the first 5 minutes of Sling Blade, or the first 15 minutes, and I was kind of afraid he might be bored, because he's 14. And then I left for about 45 minutes or so, and I came back and watched the last quarter of it. And I sat down, and he was lying on the couch. And unprompted, he just went, "This movie's friggin' awesome." Except he didn't say friggin', but
right.
So so that recently, those are pretty great. Yeah, There Will Be Blood is the best movie I've seen in a while.
Yeah, that's a great movie. Daniel Day-Lewis in that movie is amazing, as he is always.
Yeah, everybody is, and P.T. Anderson's I'll watch him, anything. I mean, there's, his movies just kind of blow my mind. So,
what's your favorite movie that you've worked on so far?
Oh, well, lots of different reasons. I would say maybe just because of the most recent is Jug Face and The Woman were great to work on. I mean, it was just fun, and they're different kinds of jobs. Those were fun. The movie that I wrote, Paradise Falls, was pretty fun. I mean, it was different though because I was producing it and I wrote it, so I couldn't just sort of chill. Yeah, I'd say those. That was about as much fun as I've had on a movie. And, as far as TV goes, Deadwood was just incredibly fun all the time. And I did a series that got canceled during the writer's strike after Deadwood called 12 Miles of Bad Road. It was a comedy starring Lily Tomlin. And it was written and produced by Linda Bloodworth Thomason and Harry Thomason. And that was a lot of fun, too, because comedy's a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
What would you say is the worst horror movie monster of all time?
The worst horror movie monster? Oh, my God. I don't. Jar Jar in that Star Wars movie? Does he categorize as a monster?
Oh, such a good answer.
Wasn't a big fan of that. The worst monster. I don't know. I can't.
I think Jar Jar is an amazing answer.
Okay.
That's a great answer. What's your cheesy guilty pleasure movie that you watch? I mean, it doesn't have to be a horror movie. Anything cheesy that you might watch, chick flick, anything.
Oh man, there's probably a lot. Okay, a chick flick. I've got a 12-year-old and 7-year-old daughter, and we watched Pitch Perfect the other night, and I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I have to say, I mean, I was like, oh god, I'm not gonna watch this, and then I went, and there I was, an hour and a half later.
Clapping. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Going, is she gonna puke again? So, yeah, I'd say that one.
What do you think about all the rebooted and remade movies? Are you for them or not so much for
It
them?
depends on the thing, but I think on the whole, there's just you know, I'm not, I don't have a problem with it per se. I mean, I don't know why you remake Psycho. I think there's certain things that just don't need to be touched. I can see how you would remake a movie or a concept that maybe wasn't as well executed as perhaps it could be by today's standards, meaning, you can do things with CGI or acting has become more naturalistic and you can make things maybe a little more realistic. But I think it's pretty much laziness. And a big part of that, is quite frankly that studios and networks own properties that they want to then just, they just want to recycle them because they don't have to buy them. They don't have to do that. So
Right.
they already, it's like, what do we already own? Oh, let's remake it. How long has it been since people have seen it? Let's remake it. So I find that I'm concerned in general about the evolution of art, and there's a really great documentary. I think it's called. It's a great documentary. I don't know the name of it. Oh, I think it's called Rip It, Mix It, or something about that. And it's about this guy who's he's a mixer, and I think he's called Girl Talk. Is he called Girl Talk, Jackson? Help me out here. My 14-year-old son's confirming. Yes, it's called Girl Talk. But what the documentary is really about is about, publishing rights. And this guy can't really record his stuff. He can do live shows with these mixes, but he can't record them and sell them because so many people have the rights to this music. But then they go through the history of music and how music, like all art forms, you borrow and you evolve from it. So I don't have a problem with people taking a concept and evolving with it. I think that's great, but I'm a little concerned about CGI madness, to be honest with you.
We are too.
Yes.
It's just it seems like they get a concept and they go, oh, we can CGI it and do like I'm looking at this movie Return to Oz or whatever, and there's and I'm gonna have to go see it because I got kids who are gonna want to see it, but I don't know, man. I think there was a clip of it, and I saw they end the trailer or the teaser or whatever with a flying monkey jumping right at you. You know what I'm talking about?
Right.
And I just thought that's not as scary as the monkeys in the 1939 version. There's just
Oh no.
Well, that and also the witch's hand at the end, I just thought looked so animated, and she was just so real in the original.
I know.
Yeah.
No, I just. So I'm not sure. I mean, it might be. It seems like they're like, oh, let's try to do a Tim Burton movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think anything successful. So there's that kind of template, a bit of like the Tim Burton, sort of Sam Raimi kind of tone and look and feel of their movies, and people think that you can just sort of do a version of that, and that's just what Hollywood does. It's just a derivative kind of cycle, and that gets old, but that's the case with anything. That's the case with TV. I can't tell you how many times I've been out to LA or been in LA for pilot season, and whatever some sort of hot topic is, there'll be like 3 or 4 shows in development about the same issue or same sort of thing. It's like, oh, CBS has got one, we got to get one. Don't we have something about that? Yeah, and then they pull it out, and because everybody's scared they're going to get scooped, and so they go with the safest thing often, what they think is, and then I don't know. I've never been in the world. It's a lot of money, but it seems like if you want to do something great, try to find something that nobody's doing, but that takes a lot of balls and,
Well, what's your favorite decade of horror?
Oh God. I don't really have a favorite decade. Not the 80s, I would say.
Okay.
Except for The Shining. But I like the old ones, man. I really do. I mean, I maybe that was just because when I was a kid, I liked them. They creep me out. Bela Lugosi is creepy.
He is. He's creepy without makeup and anything. He's creepy, man.
I kind of like the new era to a certain extent. I mean, I get tired of the idea of the possessed girl sitting in scribbling crazy. But
we figured it out actually. If a girl wears a white gown, she's gonna get possessed.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
Don't put your daughters in white gowns.
Yeah. So I don't, but I don't know. I don't really have one. But like I said, I don't really think about movies in terms of genres. I'm kind of like open to that. Open about that. It's just like, it's either a good movie for me or it's not. Like, I either care or I don't.
Right.
And there are a lot of things that can pull me out of caring. Like bad performances, bad writing. I'm like, I'm not watching this. This is bad.
Right.
But if it's really well done from top to bottom, it doesn't matter what genre it is. Like I said, Pitch Perfect, man, it was good. For what it is, they nailed it.
Right.
So I got to give it to them, and they had me for an hour and a half. My son is now laughing at me.
What is something you've learned from horror movies?
Well, never go skinny dipping at a camp at night. Yeah, that would be the big one.
Don't agree to maintain a hotel in Colorado.
Yeah. No, and that never actually kept me from skinny dipping at night. So actually, I didn't learn that one. I don't know. I haven't learned that much, I guess, from horror movies. Yeah, that's I got nothing. I don't know.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us.
Was that the last answer?
Yeah, that's good though. That's fine. That's fine. Skinny dipping is the way to go out.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/JukowFTW.
Check out our blog where you can listen and download our shows at jukowftw.blogspot.com.
And find us on iTunes by simply searching for Jukow's Podcast Kingdom.
And submit your questions to us at ask.fm/Jukow. We will answer them all each week on Undressed to Impress with a Girl.